Halloween is almost coming to its conclusion, and what you are about to see is a slew of scary stories from your humble narrator. And obviously, the spooky of all would have to be from the Hellraiser comic book once again. Now, I find this one to be one of the most unsettling stories that I've done so far, but at the same time, it's one of the more interesting ones, as it shows that the cenobites do have rules, and they can't just take anybody that they want. But surely, this will not be what you're about to expect, and this all has to deal with this woman who is willingly giving herself up to these creatures. She has had a whole life of plight, and it's very vague. It's mostly just visuals, and only till the end does anybody start talking. But throughout this whole thing is a very eerie and uncomfortable feeling going on, as you watch this woman just go about her daily tasks, and finally wrapping up to her coming home and doing what she does. Now, this is the last story in the first Hellraiser issue, and I think it is one of the more confusing ones, one of the more vague ones, so I'm hoping maybe some of you can explain to me what happens by the end of it. But it all begins with this meat shop, and this woman, she is just here, she's getting a giant slab of ham. All the artwork in this is very messy, very dirty looking, a very similar feeling to maybe watching one of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, just something that makes you want to take a shower of all things, alright? Just makes your body feel absolutely putrid. But as she's just strolling around in the supermarket and this man weighs up the meat, she throws it in a cart and she eventually leaves, and she's walking through the rain, and you're just seeing this whole cityscape in front of her. Everything is wet, she is getting completely doused with the rain, and it is all just extremely very depressing looking. But as she enters her apartment building, you see her eyes for the first time, and you see the blight and the pain and the suffering inside, and you're not really sure what to expect by the end of this. I thought almost this entire story was just going to be visual artwork, but I was very surprised. And as she makes her way up to the top, you are greeted to this creature just waiting and sitting outside of her apartment door. Now, this is a cenobite that I've never seen. I don't know if he has a name or if he is officially canon in any of the movies or anything like that, but you can tell that these two have struck a deal of some kind. And he starts climbing down the stairs to greet her, when suddenly we're getting all these flashbacks. You see this man about to hug the woman that we've been looking at the whole time, and it looks like he's about to hug her. And in the next panel, you see her smiling, she's got this blush on, and I'm almost positive that this is the focal point of her pain. But suddenly, this creature is no longer there, and she's just standing in the hallway completely wet. But within the next couple, you see this tiny eye, and then you see the concrete stairs below her, and it says, "Another false impression. How much longer must I wait?" And she enters her home. And when she arrives at the kitchen, she sees this creature sitting up on the sink. Now, this thing kind of looks more similar to a baboon or some kind of large gorilla, but it has these giant, sprawling, demonic teeth. And he has words to say to her. He says, "Alice, you shouldn't have." And he starts licking his chops, and she presents him with this ham that she just bought. And as he's sitting there, she goes to turn on the light. "So, you're finally here. Sorry, backed up, you know." And he looks at her. He's got this mask on. It almost looks like he has a belt wrapped around his head at some points. And you can tell that she is semi-happy, but at the same time, you can also tell that this is just an end to the sorrow in her life. She says, "I've run this exact scene in my head so many times I thought I'd know how to react when the time came. After the 210th time, I knew you were serious. Still feel that way? Yes. What was the last straw? Don't know. Nothing specific." And as this creature's just sitting on this table, he just says, "Typical." Now, I don't know how this lady summoned the cenobite. I'm not sure if she was in contact with any Lamont configuration, or maybe if just her sorrow and despair and willingness to die has brought this creature on. As he does say, after the 200th time, I knew you were serious. So I don't know if she was singing some kind of song, or folding some kind of paper, or any of these different creations that will unlock the vicious and unholy land of the cenobites. And this woman very graciously just asks him, "Can I get you anything before we start?" And he says, "Nah, finish the chicken in the fridge. Figured you wouldn't be needing it." "Yeah, right. If that's it, let's get started. What do I need to do?" "You've already done it. Now it's my turn." And suddenly he is sprinting at this woman. He grabs her by the mouth and pulls her jaws apart, and he starts actually jumping inside of her body. Now, what is actually going on here, I have absolutely no idea. And that's where I'm hoping maybe one of you you can give me your theory. But as he's making way in, he gets his last foot down, and she is just standing there. And she begins to head to the bathroom, turns on the faucet, and grabs a razor blade. And this is where things are going to start to get very adult, and if any of you are squeamish or triggered by any kind of situation like this, then maybe this is your chance to just leave right now. Maybe go watch something a little bit happier, because the ending of this isn't exactly happy. It is for one person. She starts to undress, and she dips one toe in the tub, and then gets all the way in. And she's just kind of sitting here, and you see this eyeball once again. And throughout the rest of this, you're going to see the cenobite basically just wandering around the inside of her body. And I believe he's like tearing her apart from the inside. You can see he's kind of got these claws, and he's just making his way down. It almost looks like he's parachuting down to the bottom. And as he gets to the bottom of her, he says, "What have we here?" He picks up this little creature, and it is actually an unborn fetus, alright? This thing is still living, and as he's looking at this, he is very confused. Does she know about you? It says who? And he just begins to laugh uncontrollably. He picks this thing up in his arms, and he's kind of rocking him back and forth. And this is where we're going to see the sweeter side of the cenobites. He says, "This just won't do. There are regulations. I mean, what would it be like if we could just take anyone? You have to want to go. Go where?" And as he's looking at this creature, he just says, "To hell." And this is where I think that maybe the eyeballs that we've been seeing in these previous panels was actually this unborn fetus. But this small baby just says, "What's hell?" And as the creature looks at it, he says, "Just as I thought. You can't stay. I'll die anyplace else." No, we're not that cruel. And suddenly you're seeing the cenobite reaching back outside of this lady's body, and he places this little baby on the ground, and it's just kind of floating there in midair. I don't know if this is some kind of cenobite magic or any of the sort, but so far it's very interesting to see this side of a Hellraiser. It's actually showing some compassion and playing by the rules. It won't just take anybody, and it's one of the more interesting stories as you get to kind of learn that these creatures do have some kind of regulatory action, alright? I don't know if they're exactly run by any kind of government body. More than likely not. I'm guessing they don't have a ton of politics other than what Pinhead says, but it's something I kind of hope to see in more of these comics to come, is a little bit of the actual structure and the inner workings of this hellish circle. But the cenobite just kind of looks at this child on the ground with a smile, and it begins to go off towards the window. It's actually smiling, and it's just sitting in the moonlight, and he says, "Go on, get out of here, you little scamp. Look, I know it ain't fair, but hey, that's why they call it hell." And it's just so funny to see a little bit of humor in these comic books as well. But he makes his way back down inside of this lady, and you see the unborn child could just kind of go off into the dark. And once again, this lady is grabbing the razor blade, and she does do what you think she does. I don't know if she needed the cenobite to help her get through this action, but it is very, very dark, and you start kind of seeing blood in the bathwater. And this is why I say, you know, this is a very touchy subject, and not necessarily one that I want to cover, but I think it is an interesting story, and I just wanted to give you guys that heads up warning before we got too deep into it. But as we're seeing this child get closer to the window, you kind of see this starlight way off in space. It's in the form of a cross, and this baby just kind of gets up on the ledge and ends up floating up into the stars. And suddenly you see this extremely bright one, and I don't know if it's just a part of the cosmos now or if it went off into heaven, but this is where I kind of want your guys' feedback. Tell me what your theories are and what you think this all means. But this is basically the end of the story. Now, an interesting one at that. Like I said, it's very cool to see a little bit of structure, a little bit of rules within the cenobite community. It is extremely vague and doesn't really tell you a whole lot. But yes, guys, I very much hope you enjoyed that. I'm sorry if it was uncomfortable. When I first read this, it actually kind of blew my mind how uncomfortable it was. I was like, man, I'm not quite sure about this series, but as I've read a couple more of these comic books, there's definitely some stories that way cross the boundary and are things that are absolutely terrible and that I never would have thought I would have read in a horror comic book. But anyways, everybody, I hope you're getting riled up for the Halloween season. I hope you're getting excited. And tell me what your plans are for Halloween and what you are going to be yourself. In an upcoming video, I'll be showing you my costume and kind of reading a story off in that. Have yourself just an absolutely fantastic day, and thank you for supporting me. Good night, or good day, or wherever you are. Just keep it real.